Hi ladies, and welcome to the Discovering Your Soul Purpose astrological e-course. I'm really glad you've decided to join me. So over the next couple of weeks we will be looking at not only the basics of astrology, which is the founding principle or the spiritual foundation of a lot of spiritual and holistic practices, whether it's past life, it's divine partnerships, it's family constellations, it's regression therapy, it's inner child work, karmic clearing, energy cord cutting. Any of those things are founded by the energetic principles that is astrology. So not only will you be learning those, this next couple of weeks is an opportunity for you to think about you for once, because, and especially as women, and it's all women on this course this time, so I'm really excited, but as women, and especially if we're intuitive or empathic or spiritual in any way, we don't spend a lot of time thinking about ourselves because we're always thinking about other people, about the work that we do, the impact that we're having, where we want to be. So having the opportunity for the next 6 weeks to do nothing but look at your own natal chart, also called the birth chart, is about giving you the chance to think about your life so far, where you want to take it, even your past life, your karmic lessons. So I'm really excited. I'm really happy you have decided to join me. Someone else has just joined me here. Hello. On the forum. So, welcome again. This should be really fun. I have sent you all a copy of your natal chart. So the natal chart, the birth chart, is in the wheel, but I've also sent you a copy of just the table because I think it's a lot easier to refer to when you're first learning, because it does all look like gobbledygook, and I don't want you to think that there's any rush or any pressure, because there is a lot of information to take in, but it's not like right or wrong. It's not like you need to memorize things or that you can be good at it or bad at it. This is just a soul journey that we're going on together, looking through our charts. So there's no pressure. Take things at your own time and enjoy it. And always, of course, feel free to ask me any questions. I love talking about this stuff. So if you come up with something in your chart that you're not a bit sure of, or you're not really sure how to approach, just let me know. So, like I said, it's not about memorizing information. It's about exploring what I call your soul's blueprint. So gaining clarity on things that have already happened to you or that you've experienced, but also showing you the fullness of your own soul. So what other potentials and what other gifts are in store that you might not yet be aware of. And this is the beauty of the natal chart. I mean, I have been practicing astrology now for over 20 years, since childhood, and I still find things on a weekly basis, and I'm like, oh my god, how did I get by without this before now? But anyway, so it's a gold mine. It really is. So what I'm going to do now, and someone else has just joined us, welcome. What I'm going to do now is just give you a quick explanation of what astrology is, how it came to be, and then about what your birth chart, or your natal chart as it's called, is. So the video for this week will look at the zodiac signs, the houses of the chart, and the planets. So next week we'll start talking more about the individual planets, your identity, your relationships, karmic work, whatever. This week is just about taking in your own chart. Okay, so nice and simple. So, astrology has been in use for thousands of years, since pre-ancient hunter-gatherer tribes. So it's simply the act of syncing the movements of the planets around us to what's going on socially and what's going on in our own lives and bodies. Because before we had technology or we had advanced civilizations, we primarily worked on the land. Like I said, we were hunters and gatherers. So as people began to progress into what we now know as the ancient eras of trade, buying, selling, traveling, developing civilization, cultures, language, the way that people could organize their time or even their physical direction was by syncing their lives with the stars and mapping out the stars overhead as a guide. So in my culture, which is Maori, which is native to New Zealand. If you've seen the Disney movie Moana, then you're familiar with Polynesian culture. We called this process of following the stars wayfinding. So, and this is how I came to learn astrology as a child, because ancient Polynesian people have been using the art of wayfinding by the stars to travel the world, you know, and move from Hawaii to Tahiti to New Zealand to the Cook Islands, and our culture was literally founded on being guided by the planetary bodies overhead. So, where people who don't believe in astrology tend to go wrong is thinking that astrologers think that the stars control us, or that planets control us, which is not true. So, when in fact all humans did in these earlier times was trace patterns in the sky that related to what was already going on. So these patterns in the sky that they made, that anybody could see and understand, were based on what humanity was already experiencing collectively. And then they could relate those patterns back to their traditional spiritual leaders, their gods or their goddesses, as a way of reminding them of what they needed to know, what time it was, what part of the year it was. The same way that we use indicators in our car or we use traffic lights on the street. So I mean, an example here that I have, and someone else has just joined us. Perfect. So an example of this is the month of Virgo, okay, which falls in the Northern Hemisphere, what is traditionally the harvest season. Okay, so it's important to know the correct time of year to be collecting the crops. Too soon and they're not ripe, too late and your crops are ruined. You know, life and death depended on when we harvested. So during the month of the harvest, for thousands of years, the sun traveled through a particular group of stars. And the people that were alive then were able to trace that pattern and relate it to the fertile harvest goddess. And that way, if your son was, you know, a soldier, a merchant, and he was 500 miles away, whenever the sun each year began to transit what everybody understood as this shape of the harvest goddess, he would know to come home and help his family with the crops. So collectively, over tens of thousands of years, people repeated these behaviors, people repeated these cycles, that they linked with nature and they linked with the stars. And so, you know, on a soul level, people born now in the month of Virgo, they're still ingrained with those harvest month principles. Does that make sense? So, you know, it was humans, it was farmers that picked out the symbols in the sky that represented what they were already experiencing. They weren't changing their behavior to fit the current star sign out of some belief in star control. You know, so this is where astrology naysayers or disbelievers kind of get it wrong. You know, and this is why astrology works, because our behaviors and experiences as humanity developed and became more advanced, those behaviors are already in place. The zodiac signs were chosen to fit us. Okay? So, the stock market, interestingly enough, was actually founded on the exact principles of astrology, which is that all things happen in cycles, and if you time when you cash in or you cash out, well, you make bank or you minimize risk. And in psychology, we talk about the hero's journey, if any of you have ever read Joseph Campbell, or the psychosocial theory of human development, or how a human develops from, you know, a baby, a newborn, into a wise elder, and through that entire life journey. So both of those psychologically accepted principles come from thousands of years of studying human behavior, which is exactly what astrology is focused on, and they have incredible parallels. From studying psychology and studying astrology, they're very, very similar. The teachings are very, very similar. The only thing that astrology takes into account that psychology, traditional clinical psychology, doesn't, is the presence of consciousness and soul. And if you're here right now, I mean, you know that soul, you know that spirit, you know that universe is a conscious and connected thing. And this is what those who came before us understood, was that we were all connected. It wasn't a matter of the stars controlling us. But at the same time, nothing exists in a vacuum. We all interact with each other, and we're all connected to that consciousness, that divinity that's within each of us. So the only difference between astrology and traditional psychology is that psychology doesn't take into account the presence of soul or divinity, whereas astrology connects those things. It connects nature with humanity, with divinity, with reality. So as we go through the signs and the planets and the houses, you'll notice there's a lot of parallels with just normal human development, or if you've got children, child development or behavior, you know, because they're not chosen at random. They all follow each other in order to follow the natural rhythms of humans. And, you know, this is how we and every other living thing in our universe functions, you know, in cycles and deeply connected to each other, and forever growing as a result of our connection with each other. So that's the history of astrology itself. I hope that makes sense. Basically, in short, the planetary bodies don't control us, but they are intrinsically connected, and it makes sense to understand that divine relationship, not in order to limit us, but in order to allow us to take our place in the universe, like the sun, like the moon, like the trees, like every other conscious thing takes its place in the universe. Our greatest gift is our consciousness and our awareness. Astrology helps us to join the dots. So what you've all been sent today is a copy of your natal chart or the birth chart. I call them both things, so it's up to you. And that's a map of exactly where all the significant planets and asteroids were and what they were doing to each other at the moment of your birth. So obviously when we read our horoscopes, we read our sun sign, because that's the one that we know. But as you can see, all of the other planets are in there too, and they're in different signs and different houses than your sun sign might be, giving your identity like so many more layers and so much more complexity and influences. So the way that I think of a birth chart is like this. You know, if you were to go to the garden store and buy a pot plant, you know, it comes with like a wee tag, you know, and the tag explains where the plant originates, whether it needs water on the roots, on the leaves, what type of food it needs, whether it's likely to grow tall or grow outward, whether you'll need to change the pot, how deeply the roots go, you know, all the conditions that that plant was meant to grow in so that you can help it thrive. So your individual natal chart is like your little tag, and it shows what conditions you were born into, so what your soul contract details are. And, you know, so that you can grow and you can care for yourself and you can bloom and be loved and be happy and be the glorious pot plant that I believe you to be. And that, you know, that's what we all deserve. But your natal chart is like that little pot plant tag that shows you what conditions you came into this life with. So I always call your natal chart your soul blueprint. So it doesn't restrict you in any way, it doesn't force you to be a certain way, but it shows you what's underneath. So just like the blueprint of a house, whatever you build on top of that is up to you, but it shows you the foundations, it shows you the plumbing, so that you don't try and build, you know, your sexy boudoir on top of like where the toilet should be, because that's not going to be very stable or very romantic, is it? No. So that's kind of that's kind of the gift of the natal chart, is it shows you where the strengths, where the foundations, where the plumbing is. And then you can work with that to build something beautiful in your own life. So those are the basics. I will leave you with this tonight. All I want you to do over the next couple of days is just look at your chart. You know, you don't have to know what anything means. And just taking it in. I know it's all like gobbledygook and crazy language, but that's your soul blueprint. You know, that is your individual soul contract that you came into this life with. So it's individual, it's sacred to you. So, you know, bond with it a little bit over the next couple of days. Just see what comes up, you know, see if you notice anything in particular, if there's anything that's featured a lot in your chart, anything that's missing in your chart. I've included a worksheet with some questions just to get you thinking, and I have also included, which I will send to you all now, a handbook with all the key terms that we will cover in this course, just so you can refer back to. So I would recommend printing them out, or at least screenshotting them, so that you kind of always have them there to go back to. And of course we have the forum here, so feel free, and I would love you to, and I would welcome you to post anything, post any answers, post any questions, anything at all about your chart that you've noticed, you know, below this video, even if it's just first reactions or things you're confused by, you know, I would absolutely love you to. I will be posting as well over the next couple of days with my answers to the questions as well. So one last thing that I want you to do over the next week as an experiment is to see your ascendant sign in your chart. So if this is your natal chart, the ascendant is the AC, which is the very beginning of your chart. So that's the sign that was on the horizon at the time and location you were born. And it shows you how the world sees you, regardless of what's going on inside. So the ascendant is always the first house of the 12 houses of the natal chart. And so when we read our horoscopes, we should always really be reading for our ascendant, not our sun, because the ascendant horoscope will show us how things will impact us directly, ourself, our personality. So, I mean, for example, myself, I am a Capricorn, but my rising sign or my ascendant is Taurus. So I read my Capricorn horoscope, but I find it so much more accurate to read my Taurus horoscope. So you can pick whatever website that you like, just as a wee experiment for reading your horoscope for your ascendant and see if it applies more to you. Just see how it resonates, and then that will be the perfect beginning to next week, when we will look at identity. So there's no pressure to know anything at all this week. It's just about experimenting, absorbing, have a look over the keywords, and just have a look over your chart over the next couple of days and post anything you like at all at the forum. Next week we will talk about the sun, the ascendant in more detail, and which is why I want you to kind of experiment this week with looking at ascendant horoscopes, and the nodes, so your identity and your purpose in this lifetime. So I hope all of that made sense today. Like I said, I have included notes, I've included the handbook. You can refer back to that at any time, and if you need anything in the meantime, just drop me an email or just post here on the forum, and we will speak very, very soon. So thank you again, ladies. We will speak soon. Bye.